Hey everyone, can you hear us all right? Okay, because it's always weird with silent sessions. Welcome to our session. I want to thank you all for coming all the way here to the Mandalay Bay, which I think is the hotel that's furthest away from whatever is happening on reInvent. So I hope we don't disappoint you. Just to set the stage, this session we're going to be talking about communities, more specifically the AWS community, and how we are using cloud technologies to help the community fix some of the challenges they've been running into when organizing events. So just so we can know you a little bit better, who here is part of one of the AWS community programs? AWS user groups, community builder, heroes? Okay, so some of you. But for the ones that are not part of an AWS user group, I invite you to go to the AWS user group directory on meetup.com and see if you have a user group close to your city. If you don't have one yet and you want to start one, you can talk either to me or to Paloma and we can help you out. But okay, let's get started. My name is Ana Cunha. I'm a developer advocate for the AWS Developer Relations team in Latin America. And I'm joined by my very special guest here, co-speaker, Paloma, who's an AWS hero. She became an AWS hero this year. She's also from Brazil. And she's going to give you an overview of the AWS community, more specifically the AWS community in Brazil, some of the events she has been organizing, and the challenges she's been facing.
All right. To start, let's talk about the AWS Brazilian community. As you can see here, we have Brazil on the side with communities, and in the other side, our brand, our logo, and this brand represent diversity of people. And our fun curiosity is, in Brazil, this caramel dog is a huge symbol, so we use for everything. And all right, Brazil is a huge country, full of the people who are passionate about technology. And within AWS communities, there are many AWS user groups spread in our country. Currently, there are more than 20, and in the last 2 months, more than 5 new communities have been created. It's a great number, right? And at this rate, it looks like by 2025, we will have more than 30 AWS user groups in Brazil. And one thing that made me proudest about the AWS communities in Brazil is how connected and supportive everyone is. Almost every day we have some kind of discussion, of conversation to discuss about new topics, new technologies, or just to share some kind of knowledge. And the most important thing that we do is keeping alive the feeling that we will be there to support everyone in any situation that may happen. For example, in June, the southern region of Brazil went through a big flood. And this big flood caused a terrible damage to the cities in Rio Grande do Sul state and deeply affect thousands of people who lost everything. In the same month, our community stayed together and start a free activity with sessions and training to anyone who could make some kind of donation to help these people. Our community came together, and in just a few days, we were online with a 24-hour marathon of cloud content to support this cause. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? Brazil is a hit country, many events happening every month, and sometimes we face with challenges. And our last one was how manage our call for speakers. And one event that really stood out was the first Also Women Community Summit in Brazil. It was the largest AWS event organized by women, just for women, to create a support network for these women, empower them, and share technical knowledge. We had over 400 women gathered in 3 rooms for a full day of cloud content. And what made me proudest about this event was the number of talk submissions that we received. We received more than 130 talk submissions sent just by women. It's a major number of the talk submissions in all Brazilian community. Right, Anna?
Yes, I think Paloma is being modest here. Apart from an AWS community organizer, she also organizes DevOps days across Brazil. So in your experience, you told me you usually receive between 30 to 40 sessions on a call for speakers, and for this event specifically, they received almost 140 sessions. So a huge challenge right there, not only selecting the sessions, but managing those sessions as well.
Yes, and in this time, our major problem was how to manage all these talk submissions. Because in Brazil has multiple events, a large event, the available tools is so expensive. And when we try to get a free trial or a community version, there were significant limitations. For example, some tools didn't allow to automatic emails for approvals or rejections, or they couldn't be customized with fields to filter submissions better. And after a talk with another leaders, we realized that is a common challenge for all user groups. And one way to solve this problem is for the community to create its own tool. This is how we started thinking about a solution that could be used by any AWS user groups in Brazil or any events in Brazil with benefits like be an open source tool, meaning everyone in AWS community can help and improve the applications, and with everyone's contribution we can add new features, make some adjustment, and meet what the community needs. Being community use, this platform can be used by any event in Brazil, and the event organizer, no matter the size or focus of the event, can use it to easily manage the speaker selection process. Our platform has a low cost because we use the AWS credit that our community receives. So this makes accessible to anyone without a financial burden. And for last, we realized that centralize this platform and share with everyone is a way to simplify our process and simplify these challenges. And to make this happen, we decided to use the AWS Amplify.
Yeah, I want to know who here has already used AWS Amplify. Okay, some of you. And who has used the new version of Amplify that just launched last re:Invent? Okay, a few of you. So just to make sure everyone is in the same page, Amplify is a set of services and frameworks and libraries that we can use to create full stack applications backed by AWS services. One of the things that I really like about Amplify is that it abstracts away which AWS services we are using. So if I want to add authentication to my application, I just write a few lines of codes and I have authentication. I don't really need to know which services are behind, but then if I do want a more advanced use case and personalization, I can get that as well. So this is the tool that we chose. Amplify allows us to build both the front end and the back end. And Paloma is going to say why we chose the AWS Amplify.
All right. And when you start planning this tool, we realized that it's quick to set up and able to handle all the traffic when many users submit their talks. And the reason why is because first is a quick setup. When you start to use AWS Amplify, starting to build your application is fast and easy. So with just a few clicks, we can add new features like APIs, authentications, storage, or just to host your app. Second, user-friendly. The AWS Amplify is so intuitive too and has a clear documentation. So this make this even to use even for those with minimal technical knowledge. Third, easy deployment with the update is so easy with just a few clicks. We can add your pipeline and Amplify abstract everything for you You just need to connect your Git tool like GitHub or something like this. And after this, the Amplify became everything for you. And scalable. Our platform can adapt, and the system adapts to ensure that everything runs smoothly.
Yeah, I think on the user friendliness, we all have our complaints, me as well, from about the AWS documentation. The Amplify documentation is way cleaner. It goes straight to the point. It's not perfect, but I do personally feel that it's better than most of the other AWS services. It's super easy to deploy. You connect your GitHub repo. It creates a CI/CD pipeline for you, and it deploys both your front end and the back end services as well. And by scalability, most of the default AWS services that Amplify uses are serverless. So we are not supposed to be incurring costs if no one's submitting their sessions, but then we can handle the load if an event like the Awesome Women Community Summit is very, very popular and it's receiving a bunch of submissions at the same time. Something else that we were concerned about, and especially Paloma, because I'm a developer, but Paloma is the DevOps person here, is how to define our infrastructure as code. I don't know if you have gone through that problem, but for a project that I worked once, we were just creating things on the console, on the UI, and everything was working in the development environment. And then when we deployed to production, I realized I forgot to create a bunch of things. So to not go through that type of experience and have other benefits, we are using infrastructure as code as well.
Yes, because we noticed that create things with infrastructure as code is the best way, because you can reply your infra for another's features or another's event. And when you use the infrastructure as code, you can ensure that your state, your current state, is preserved, and to manage this is all can be easier. And about a year and a half ago, I built a website for a temporary initiative for the community. And at this time, I used Terraform with OpenTofu and TerraGrunt to build this, and everything is okay. And when I try to reply this code, to reply this for use in our last event, I faced with a challenge. The Amplify authentication method has changed, and now for us integrate external tools like OpenTofu, Terraform, or TerraGrunt is more complex.
To get around that, we started studying possibilities within the AWS ecosystem. So AWS Cloud Development Kit is an infrastructure as code tool. You download the library to your computer and you can define your infrastructure using your favorite programming language, TypeScript, Java, Python. But you still have to have knowledge about the AWS services you want to use. So if we want authentication on our application, we need to know that we have to use Cognito. CDK has sensible defaults, but it requires some deeper knowledge on the services that are being used. That's why we ended up using the new version of Amplify, Amplify Gen 2. It now allows you to define your infrastructure as code. So for those of you who used Amplify, the previous version of Amplify Gen 1, you could either build your app on the console. It was called Amplify Studio. So with a few clicks, you set up your data model or you configure your authentication, or you could use the CLI or both of them together. For the new version of Amplify, we have this code-first approach where we use TypeScript to define our infrastructure. So I say, I want authentication, and my users are going to log in with their email, and that's it. So I don't need to know that Cognito's behind, or if I set up an API, I don't need to know that AppSync is behind. It's lightweight, and I think it's also easy to bring in together more people. So we can have other community members help us build this without them having to know deeply each of those services. And as I said before, Amplify can host both our front end and the back end of our application. We can do this separately if we want. We can host just the front end. For my personal site, for instance, I just host the front end with Amplify because I plug it to my GitHub repo and it's just good to go. Any changes are automatically updated. So let's stop talking and start coding, right, Paloma?
Right.
Okay.
That's the best part.
Here we go. Okay. Hopefully the demo gods will help us this afternoon. If not, I have the app here, the version that we were developing. But I want to start building this together with you. And quick disclaimer, neither Paloma or I are front-end developers. So we also want to show you how Amplify and the Amplify libraries help us build nice looking, they could be better looking, but nice looking applications even without that knowledge. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a new React project using Vite. We're going to give it a name. And then another disclaimer, this new version of Amplify uses TypeScript for defining the infrastructure. And as I was playing with Amplify Gen 1 for the past 2 years, it was everything on JavaScript. So it also has been a different challenge that we had to face, even though I'm originally a Java developer, so I do love types, but TypeScript really messes with me. Okay, let's see if the reInvent Internet helps us do this. In the meantime, I want to show you quickly the Amplify docs. Has a getting started guide that to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of because it starts with like a half-built application. But it's way nicer looking, has a bunch of code snippets. It goes straight to the point, not like the rest of the documentation that tries to talk about everything. Okay, so this is our dummy app. It's running locally on my machine. And now what we want to do, this is just the front end with React. Now what we want to do is create a backend for it using Amplify, and all the backend will be hosted on AWS. So to do that, I have another tab here. We're going to run this command that's going to say that our app is an Amplify application. I'm not in the project folder, sorry. Yeah. Okay. npm create amplify at latest. Okay, there we go. So it's installing all the Amplify dependencies and creating all the configuration that we need to make sure our front end is backed by cloud resources. So this is the original React app that we created, and now it's gonna set up an Amplify folder where we define all of our infrastructure. Let's see how that's going. So the way we did this before, if you have played with Amplify, it was using the Amplify CLI. So Amplify init would initiate an Amplify project and also tie those resources to the backend. While it's installing, something that we can do is configure our front end to talk to those backend resources. So I don't know if it's going to be here. No. Manual installation. Not here too. That's why I'm not a fan of their getting started guide, because it's an application that's already there. There we go. So with these 3 lines of codes, after running the create amplify command, our front end can already talk to backend resources on AWS. So let me copy this. Okay. Amplify has started. We just need to go to our... So what Amplify creates is this folder, and we have subfolders for each of the resources we want to add to our application. So authentication, it starts with authentication by email. And then data, it starts with a dummy data source that we're going to update just now. And then there's this backend that defines everything here. So if we want to add storage, we would create a storage folder with a resource.ts file and then add storage here to the backend. All of this syntax is Amplify specific, but it's supposed to be very straight to the point. Okay, so to configure this, we import the Amplify library. This outputs file is going to be created once we do our first deploy to the cloud, and then we do this configuration. So let's just do that first deployment first. And another really nice thing about the new version of Amplify is that you can create a sandbox on your AWS account. So I can do that on my account. Paloma can do that on her account. The infrastructure is defined as code, so it's going to be the same for all of us. There's no on my machine works, but on yours doesn't. But then we also have those separate development environments before we send things to production. So to create a sandbox, we're going to run this command. I'm not authenticated to my AWS account. Sorry. Should have probably done that before we started. Okay. So if you have, this is because I'm authenticating to an internal account, but if you have your AWS profile set up, that should be enough. So now Amplify will take all the backend resources we defined here and start deploying them to my AWS account. It's going to create a stack on CloudFormation that we can check just now. Let's just go here so you can see this. And even though we use CloudFormation to see the stack, Amplify is actually using CDK. So if you're familiar with CDK, then you need to run the bootstrap command. Amplify will also do that automatically for you if you have never done that before. So that's part of the reason why we both feel it's very accessible for users who are not super deep into the cloud or AWS in particular. So here it is. It's creating the stack for our sandbox. So this is not meant for production. It's meant for me to test the front end with an actual DynamoDB table, with an actual Cognito user pool. So we have all of that. And then once that's finished, it takes about 2 minutes the first time you do it. But then it just uses the functionality that CDK already has with CDK Watch. So if I make changes to the backend, it's just going to deploy those changes. Once that's finished, we're going to have the Amplify outputs file and be able to configure that. After we do this, we can start using our backend resources on our front-end application. So it's on its way. In our case, it's going to be creating an auth stack that, for those of you who are familiar, is backed by Cognito, and a data stack with that data definition that I showed you. That is just the schema for a to-do that's backed by DynamoDB as the database and AppSync as the API to access those resources. Let's see how the deployment's going. On its way. And then I just leave the sandbox command running whenever I'm developing. And if I make any changes there, it's going to update with those changes. After you do it the first time, it's faster usually. And then something that we also recommend is when you're no longer working on this development project, or if you're going home for the weekend, you can also run a sandbox delete and just delete all those resources. And the cool thing about infrastructure as code is that since they're defined in our code, we can just spin up the infrastructure again whenever we need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our time for when you need to restore something, the time is so short.
So if we go to DynamoDB, for instance, we're going to see here the to-do table that it has just created for that data model. In the meantime, while the deployment finishes, since Paloma and I are working on a call for papers tool, we don't want to have a to-do, right? It doesn't really make sense. So we have the schema definition for a session. A session is a talk that someone from the community is going to propose to a specific event. It has a title, has a description, additional notes. So I have this here on my clipboard. So here we go. This is the Amplify way of defining a data model. So I have a title, it's the type string, and it's required. Same for a description. Additional info, it's usually something that only the event organizers can see. So for instance, for this session, we could say, we're going to talk about the communities in general in Brazil, and then we're going to do a live demo showing how we built an application for the communities. This is something that Paloma, as an event organizer, is always mindful of having, is asking people if they require accessibility requests for events or financial assistance to attend events. And if you're from an underrepresented group in technology, it's also something that the whole AWS community, not just in Brazil, but in general, is very mindful of. We have the session level as an enum because we only want to have those three. And then we also have the session status. So as soon as someone submits a session, the default value is in review, but then you can see if it was accepted or declined. And then this little snippet of code here says that the owner, whoever created the session, is the only person that can see that session right now. And on auth, on the authentication definition that we have here, what we have used is, apart from the user email, we also want their first name, their last name, a profile picture, their website, and then you can say, is it mutable? Can the user change that afterwards? It's just a true or false flag, and then if it's required or not. And apart from that, you can also have custom attributes. So this is all backed by Amazon Cognito, but we don't need to know anything about Cognito. And you can also create groups. So we have an admin group here. So we can add, for instance, the admin as someone who can see all the sessions that were submitted. Or can see the sessions, but cannot edit the sessions. We have all the level of granularity. Okay. Finally, our deployment finished. It only took us 3 minutes and 15 seconds. But it has created this Amplify outputs file that I'm going to show you right here. So it has all our backend configuration. So this is the type of file you shouldn't be putting on your GitHub repo. It's already on our git ignore. By default, when you create an Amplify project, it adds that file to your git ignore. But this is something, if we had created all those resources manually, we would have to fill out all this information so a front end could eventually, potentially use them. Okay. Now we can actually configure Amplify to use this. We can save these changes here to the data and to the authentication stack. And you're going to see that this is going to trigger a new deployment, an update of our stack, which hopefully should take less time this time. But this is the development flow, right? We start with a simple app. It has authentication and a dummy data model. We can do more things on our authentication, like we have done, adding additional user attributes, saying that some of them are required. So those are going to be part of the whole authentication flow when you sign up for an account. And then we also created our own data model for the sessions. and all those specificities of permission, saying that only the owner can see it. So let's see. So I told you that Amplify is not just an AWS service. It's a set of libraries, frameworks. So apart from the regular Amplify library that was installed here automatically when we ran the command, they also have a UI library. So we can use ready-to-use UI resources, some of them just for styling, but some of them are actually connected to the backend that we just defined. So this has been really helpful for Paloma and I, which we are not front-end developers, and we fight with CSS. So this is something that we used on our app as well, and I want to show you here. So we have base components, but we also have the connected components. So one of them is the authenticator. Once we have configured the authentication on our application, we can just use the authenticator component, and that's gonna set up the entire signing and account creation process. So let's do this. We need this library, the UI React library. It doesn't come with the regular UI libraries. Yes. So one thing that we didn't say, if you make changes to your auth stack, you need to redeploy your account. So good to keep in mind if this is already in production, you already have your auth defined. So it's just asking us to recreate the stack from scratch. And this is the UI library that we just showed you the website of. And what we meant about the documentation being user-friendly, it's just that, no? It gives you code snippets of how you can do that. So right here we have clearly they could have linked direct to the point where we want to get. But here they have the few lines of code that we need to set up that authenticator UI component. So let's do just that. Oops. So we're going to import the component. We're going to import the specific styling and CSS of the UI components library. And then we can just add the authenticator here, which means that whoever wants to access our application needs to be authenticated, and that works out of the box. We don't need to do any more connecting this to our Cognito resources. I don't think this is going to work just now because it's still deploying, but we can see how it looks like. So this is how it looks like. It's way better than anything that Paloma and I could have done ourselves. And we can also customize it. We can customize the CSS, but Amplify also has a really nice way of customizing the theme. So now I want to show off Paloma's UX and UI skills. So this is the Amplify UI kit that's available on Figma. If you use this on Gen 1, you could have your own components created out of this library and import them directly to Amplify using Amplify Studio, and it would create the React components for you connected to your backend. Right now it's not that simple on Gen 2 because they went from a UI click approach to more a coding approach, but we can still use this to our advantage. So Paloma has created the mocks of how we want our application to look like. And Amplify now has a Figma plugin. It's over there, AWS Amplify UI Builder, where you can get the React code for these components right here. So instead of importing them automatically like we did before on the console, right now you can download them all at once, or you can copy them as you need them. So if we're in dev mode on Figma, we can see them right here. But if you're not in dev mode, you can also download those components, all the components that have been defined here. So unfortunately, and we're going to show you in a minute, our application is not looking like that yet. But this is what Paloma has designed, and this is how we plan to do it. So we have a user profile. People can edit their information, submit their sessions, and then you can see the dashboard of the talks that you have submitted, if they have been accepted or rejected. I'd say we're half of the way there, right, Paloma? Yeah. Okay. Let's see how the deployment's going. Okay. So it's not finding the Amplify outputs file because we just started redeploying everything. So that should be done in a minute. But in the meantime, I'm just going to show off this functionality right here then. So it shows which components being used. For us that are not, let me see if I can increase the zoom. No. For us that are not CSS experts, you can just like copy and paste everything and it's going to look like it looks on Figma. Maybe some tweaking required. We are also not Figma experts, so if one of you can help us with that, we would immensely appreciate it. And something that you can do with this plugin is change the theme, no? So Amplify comes with a default theme with default colors. This is not here, but it's the, when we were looking at the authenticator component, it's that blue, teal blue. I don't have it anymore. Amplify UI Authenticator. So this is the default look and feel. Paloma and I changed to that purple colors. And if you change it at a theme level, then everything will follow that. So the links, the buttons, the text color, even that little thing above that shows you if you're in sign in or create an account. And you can do this here on Figma as well. So if you go here to the Amplify UI Builder plugin, you can set up, we set up a custom, it has presets, but you can set up a custom theme color that you want to use. And there you go. It creates the variants for you as well. And not just colors, but also spacing, font sizes, all the things that you can imagine. This is sort of like a design system for our applications. And then what you do, you download the component code, and it's going to download the theme file, and we have imported that on our... this is actually downloading all components you have here, so you can just import the library and you have the React components ready. But you can also copy the theme, and then you would have here all the theme definition with the changes you've made. So let's see how our deployment's going. Okay, perfect. So the application's working again. Now we're going to create an account just to show you folks. So here, if you have noticed, all the fields that we set as required, which were family name and given name, are on the create an account workflow. And now I'm going to receive a confirmation code on my email, because who doesn't like when someone creates an account with your email and then you can never get rid of that? So let's see when that happens. But what I love about Amplify is that we didn't have to do anything. We just imported this component after setting up our authentication, which could be as simple as just these lines of code. And then it's already tied to that. It has the authenticator component is a smart component that is tied to your backend, and you don't need to configure anything yourself. Hopefully will be soon. Yes. I received an email. Let's see. 793890. And then it's the same application we had before, right? But now you need to be authenticated to use it. But if you remember, we have also created a schema definition for the sessions. Something else that Amplify can help us do is create a React component for creating a new session and for updating a new session. So something else that helps us that we don't need to know anything about UI, right? So let me show you here, because it's going to create a new folder. So with this command, generate forms, it's going to generate create and update forms for all of your data models. Okay. And you need to be authenticated. So now we have this UI components library with the form that we need to create a session. So if we want to use it on our app, for instance, we can remove all of this. What is it called? Create session form. I wish VS Code would help me here, but okay. It's under sources? No. Let me see how I did it on my other project. Create session form, okay. But this is because I'm on pages. Hopefully, no. Okay. Something that we used a bunch on this app creation was Amazon Q to help us solve them problems like this, like an import that's not working. So what I personally do, I copy the error message and I'm like, please help me. Can you help me solve this error? So Amazon Q is our GenAI coding assistant. So instead of going to Stack Overflow or Google, which personally made me lose a little bit of my flow because I would end up on Twitter or somewhere else, I can try to solve those problems directly on the IDE. So let's see what it says. It's happening because you're importing create session form, but you're using session create form. Okay, so there's a typo first. So it is session create form. But then it has, so this is some of the problems we went through. When you run that command to generate the forms, it's using JavaScript, but the project's using TypeScript. So let's just change this to a TypeScript file and hope it works. Okay, that's not helping me. Okay, maybe instead of just being here debugging this, we can show you how the app is looking like I have it right here. Without the pressure of an audience. Is it still on the same? So this is the final version of the app right now, but not really, because Paloma and I are going to keep working on this next year. But let me sign out so you can see. Still not looking exactly like what we have on Figma. Hopefully we'll get there soon. But we can log in. And then once you log in, you can see your sessions. You can see if they've been accepted, declined, or they're still in review. And you can submit a new session. So Event 2024 demo. And then all the questions that they usually have on their community events page, the level of the session, and it even has this default validation. We said that the fields were required, so we won't let you submit the form if the fields are not here. And then now we can see the new session we have just submitted, which is working as of now. And then on the Amplify console, there's something that's super helpful, because usually we have a view for the speakers, whoever wants to speak at an event, but then we need to create a view for the admins, people who are reviewing the sessions, which is kind of boring and not an exciting challenge for developers. So Amplify also lets you access the backend data directly through the console if you want. So there's a data manager here. This is something that they already had on the previous version too. So if someone is reviewing a session while we haven't created our admin view of our application, you can just come here and say it was accepted or declined or whatever. This is actually the app that's running production. So it's not the one on my local machine. Talking. Oops. Okay, so we changed from declined to accepted, and we can go back and forth here if we want to update that as well. While we haven't developed the admin UI part of this, no? So now the session has been declined. And something else, if you can see here, this was deployed using CDN as the content delivery network. The static files are on an S3 bucket. The backend is using DynamoDB and AppSync for the data model, Cognito for the authentication. If we wanted to add storage, it's also very simple. Then it will be backed by S3. Everything with sensible defaults, but we can make changes as well. And Amplify is extensible using the CDK. So if you want something that's way more complex, that it's not naturally defined by Amplify on an easy way, you can just define those resources using CDK. And now they have a really cool AI components as well. So you can just call a foundational model if you want. It was just launched. I think we have a session about it going on reInvent if you want to check that out. You can just define an AI resource and it's going to call a foundational model for you. So all of that, I know because I personally developed a Lambda function that would call Bedrock, and I would have that on my Amplify application, so it's way, way easier. And I think we can go back to the deck now. Because Paloma and I were working on this, it's clearly still just starting. But the AWS community is full of awesome people. Everyone's a builder in one way or another. I'm a developer, Paloma is a DevOps person. I think we complement each other really well. We're probably missing someone who's more on the design side of things and who understands Figma. But the AWS community in general, and more specifically, the AWS community in Latin America, has developed some really cool projects this year, and we want to make sure we showcase them as well. In case you want to know more, in case you want to know more about it.
Yeah, and one project that really amazing is the queue, developed by Hazel. Hazel is a serverless hero, and she developed this to help us with events, help us with to get information about the AWS user groups. So the queue is a system for WhatsApp, and you can send a message and ask about the events that will happen or about the user group, and you can get all information about this. So to let you know more about it, Rachel record a video, and you can know more in this QR code. You can scan it. So let's listen to Hazel.
AWS hero from Guatemala, and I'm here to introduce you Q. Q is more than a virtual agent. It's a bridge to connect AWS communities around Latin America and soon the world in all the different language that is out there to provide valuable information about the community, events, and support the community leaders. Q was developed using Amazon Bedrock agents, Cloud Sonnet, and a full serverless architecture behind. So, what are you waiting for? Go try Q and ask whatever question you may have about AWS communities. Bye-bye.
Hazel is an AWS serverless hero, as Paloma mentioned. She's from Guatemala. Really, really cool. One thing that I loved about it is that she developed this using Bedrock agents, but since knowledge bases are slightly expensive, she managed to have all the data on APIs. So she's using the actions of the Bedrock agents to get access to the data, all the events the user groups are having, the community days, all that data, without using knowledge bases for agents. I thought that was really inventive and keeping the costs low. Another tool that we want to talk about, and we have the honor of having one of its creators here in the front row, developed by Sebastián Marínez y David Victoria, completely speaking Spanish, that are community builders from Mexico. They developed this really cool networking tool that was used on the AWS Mexico Community Day. I don't have my badge here. Here it is. So they print out QR codes that other attendees can scan and then get your contact card information. So their goal is to have more networking between the attendees, that we're sharing information, and on the Community Day of Mexico, they even gamified this process, giving prizes to people who had the most number of scans. And David brought this here to reInvent. I don't know if you have the QR codes here. So yeah, if you want to get a QR code with the V at the end of our session, there you go. And we're going to let you hear a little bit more about it from the creators themselves.
At Rackspace Technology and Cloud Club Captain at Tecnológico Monterrey. And together with David Victoria, we developed a networking tool for the AWS Community Days. We understand that building meaningful connections at tech events can be challenging, and that's why we created this tool to help builders connect and exchange contact information with other people. The platform collects key demographic data, giving organizers valuable insights into our community's compositions and needs. We built this using modern cloud-native architectures such as React for the front end, AWS Lambda functions, and DynamoDB on the back end, using a single table design pattern in DynamoDB and AWS SAM to deploy everything on the cloud. This project demonstrates how AWS services can be leveraged to create practical solutions that bring our communities closer. Try it out now and start building meaningful connections within the AWS community.
And there you go. You get the attendee contact information directly on your phone. If you want to know more about it, they wrote a really nice blog post saying what was the reasoning behind the PIN number. So users, because we're all introverts in tech, or most of us are, so people wouldn't just be scanning the QR code, they would have to ask you for your PIN. And they also have other things they've developed for this event, the agenda for the Mexico Community Day. You could save your sessions as favorite. They could get data on which sessions were the most liked. So the message that we want to leave you with is that not just Paloma and I, nor just David and Sebastian or Hazel, everyone in the AWS community is building all of these tools to help them organize events, to help them streamline processes. These are all volunteers. I'm super, super proud to work with them because they do this on their free time. They are bringing knowledge about cloud computing and technologies in general. In particular, because I work in LATAM, to the whole LATAM region, but we have community builders and user group leaders and heroes all over the world. So if you want to help Paloma and I build our application, if you want to create a pull request, open an issue, report a bug, feature enhancement, all of this, please help us out. Please help the V out, Hazel. All of these tools are open source and available to everyone. And we want to thank you very much for being here. If you want to connect with Paloma and I, here are our socials. We're going to be hanging out a little bit after the session. Paloma has the coolest stickers I have ever seen. So if you want some stickers, apart from the QR codes from the V, thank you so much for being a part of this. Please fill out the survey so we can keep improving the content that we deliver to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.